So our next session, we are very privileged to hear from Laura Pintur and Nic Zettl, and they're going to be talking about some of their work, their experiences with a bit of a youth focus. I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of info on if I can find it. Here we go. Laura, she's a passionate advocate and speaker against the objectification of women and girls. In today's culture, she confidently exposes the rise of pornography and the ramifications on society. In early last year, she began the Zoo campaign, Zoo Weekly magazine, actively engaging with the public to have the Lads mag removed from the supermarket shelves, which successfully saw the closure of the magazine completely. Woohoo! Am I right? Go, Laura. Laura currently travels around Australia, speaking to young high school students with Collective Shout co-founder Melinda Tankard-Reist about the increasingly problematic sexualisation of young people. She has recently appeared on ABC2 TV as a panel guest for the live TV discussion Australians and Porn. And Nic Zettl is a 20-year-old engineering student from the north side of Brisbane that has a passion to see the youth of today, particularly boys, break free from the harmful precedents set by popular culture when it comes to sex, drugs and body image. So, Nic and Laura, take it away.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. Awesome. Hi guys, how are you all doing? Our brains a bit overloaded. We wanted to have this discussion, it's quite an open discussion with you guys, to really share our experiences as young people working in this field, as well as getting your opinions on a few things and really opening up the discussion to you. So we thought we'd just start off introducing ourselves, why we decided to speak up in this space and how we're kind of living that out, and then give it over to you guys and just facilitate a discussion. So as Caitlin said, my name's Laura, I'm 24 years old and I've only been working in this space for a few months, and that was because I saw Melinda Tankard-Reist speak and my mind was blown because I was like, yes, this is an issue that has impacted me and all my friends. And what Melinda's talk did so brilliantly was that it offered another narrative to what I was constantly exposed to. And what I was so I've never been exposed to pornography. I've never actively watched it, but I've been affected by it. And I think that's a real importance because so many people are like, oh, porn's not affected me, I've not watched porn. But I am so passionate about actually porn, I think, has affected everyone in ways that I don't think people know. And so as a 24-year-old growing up in high school, you just have all these unrealistic expectations on who you're meant to be, how you're meant to look, what you're meant to do with boys. The list goes on really. And for me, I had no idea where those came from. And it wasn't until Melinda's presentation really highlighted that for me. And it was that culture is just bombarding us with all these messages, and it's only giving us one narrative. So I loved that, there was this other narrative. It opened my eyes up to what we're normalizing around us is actually making the younger generations really, really sick. Anxiety is risen like crazy. And I think there's so much pressure on young girls to just have this performance on all the time and to just have that constant pressure to be this unrealistic expectation of this person that's actually, impossible to be. So I, along with Collective Shout, decided to run the campaign to get Zoo magazine out of Coles and Woolworths. And I did it based on a study that was done in the UK by Middlesex University. And it showed statements taken from convicted rapists and statements taken from lads mags like Zoo. And what it showed that people could not distinguish the source of the quotes. I did the actual study myself, the questions, and I was just shocked by some of the content that was in these magazines. And to me that just highlights, what we as, our culture is just constantly walking past, yet the young boys are reading, the young girls are having to put up with. What happens is the young boys read these magazines, watch it online, see it on Facebook, and because they're not being offered another narrative, they just go along with it. They just think it's normal and they act it out on girls, or they, act it out among themselves, and it's just a toxic environment. So now what I do is speak in schools with Melinda, and it's amazing, like just to be able to offer another narrative to these young people. I think if I had that when I was in high school, I think a lot of hurt would have been, wouldn't have occurred, because those are the years that a lot of, how you are when you grow up forms. And you have so much, anxiety about who you are and your identity, and so much pressure that when someone can kind of come in and speak to you about another narrative, you're able to actually make those choices. So for me, that's what I'm passionate about, is offering another narrative to these young kids who at the moment are only getting one thing. And I believe so passionately that pornography is just such a huge factor in so much of the mental illness, so much of the self-harm, so much of the body image issues, everything like that. But it's also not just pornography, it's like, what we're normalising in movie clips, what we're normalising in media, advertising, things like that. And I kind of want to be able to teach young kids how to kind of navigate their way around a pornified world. Because I think that, it's not just what they see online, but it's everywhere. So if we can educate them and empower them to make better choices, I think that's where it lies. Because we don't want to shame them, we don't want to say what you're doing is wrong. We just want to say that the culture around you is making you sick. Here's another option. Here's something that might be able to make you feel a bit more empowered. Because at the moment, what they're getting is telling them that they're going to be empowered and free and liberated, but it's actually just like enslaving them more to themselves, and it's secluding them more, and it's, as we go around schools, it's just crazy. But since working in this space also, I've had a lot of friends who have opened up about pornography issues to me, and to me that's like such a huge win, because talking about it and actually giving people permission to talk about it is the first step, and I don't think that's being done enough. And so I would love to in the future just be able to do that more, open up more spaces for people to talk about it and actually, give people permission to talk about it. That's me kind of in a nutshell. I'll hand over to Nick, but we'd just love to get like your opinion on things, ask us questions, and really just have a bit of a discussion, because you guys, been hearing a lot. So we'd love to hear from you guys, but over to Nick.
Cool.
Yeah.
As Laura said, my name is Nick. I'm 20 years old, from the sunny coast in Queensland. Yeah, got a few. Nice, love it. And I'm halfway through my engineering degree at the moment, and this is sort of a little passion of mine that I'm doing on the side as well. I had the privilege last year of meeting some wonderful people like Melinda Tankard-Reist and Laura here today, and over that year I've sort of journeyed with them a bit, just casually sort of going with them into some schools and chatting with young boys and girls about these harmful issues of pornography and the long-term harmful effects that are going along with them. For me, it's sort of been a bit of the flip side of Laura's story, where I very much have been affected that being a young male in this society, personally as well as friends around me. It's something that is, as you're all aware, very prominent in today's society. Whether it's down at Woolies, thankfully there's no more Zoo magazine to be bombarded with, thanks to Laura here. You're walking through the newsagents, you've got it. You're walking down the street, there's billboards. You're on the bus, it's on the side of the bus you're taking to school. It's ridiculous what people are having to work with these days. For me, my passion lies with the boys. Quite often we sort of, around these topics, we hear very much how boys can be misconstrued as the guilty party and sort of, here's what you're doing, it's bad, stop it. Whereas for me, I love coming in, getting alongside these guys and just doing life with them and chatting, saying, hey, you're a victim in this as well. For me, it's very much about letting them know that it's okay, that they're not the bad guys in this, that they are just as much a victim of a warped society that is around them. And hopefully one day, as Laura said, with the growing rate of people having this conversation, we'll be able to work towards eradicating that. Now, seeing as though I've told you just a little bit about me, I'd be really interested to know a little bit about you. So just, if you're comfortable, by a show of hands in the audience, I'd like to see who here has been affected, whether that's been witness to or, as Laura said, externally affected by pornography. Show of hands. All right, I think we're pretty unanimous on that one. Wonderful. Alrighty, now if you're really comfortable, we'll go a bit deeper. Who of you there saw it unintentionally, whether that's stumbled across it online, had a friend showed it to you, or in Laura's case was affected by somebody else's actions or behaviours. Again, resounding majority. Alrighty, one last one. Who here would say that their first age of exposure was pre-high school, 13 and under? That's pretty scary, hey? Yeah, very scary.
And that was probably before like smartphones and everything at school.
Mm.
And that's what scares me, I think, the most, is that we were on the cusp of like smartphones in schools, and now I have 2 younger sisters and they're in high schools, and it's just like they have the phones at their ready, and it's just rampant.
Absolutely. As Laura said, we're sort of being sold this narrative really by TV, by music, by advertising, and by pornography ultimately. This sort of falsehood of what beautiful and romantic and natural and healthy sexuality should be, and it's a complete lie. And as we heard this morning, Dr. Flood, it's now a $24 billion per annum lie that we're being sold. Pretty hard to combat, which is exactly why we're here today having this conversation. Alrighty, so now we sort of want to get into a bit of an informal session, just with you guys chatting.
We've got first question.
Straight away, please.
Yes, I love this. We were like, what if no one asked a question? What are we going to do? Yeah, amazing.
You talked about giving young people an alternative narrative.
Yes.
What is that narrative?
So, for me, an alternative narrative looks like giving them permission to say no. Giving them permission to say, you know what, you don't have to send the picture to the boy. Or to, you know, say, what about we praise the young guys that go to the party and take the drunk girl home to her home and to her house to keep her safe, rather than just be a bystander in seeing boys take advantage of the girl at the party. You know, I think it's really encouraging good behaviour. You know, not saying this is what you have to do, this is what you have to do, this is what you have to do, but really encouraging and reinforcing just another option, because at the moment they're only getting one option, which is, you know, what pornography shows, which you've heard about all day, and what the media shows, and that at the moment is just proving to be really detrimental to all young people. So I think just giving them the permission to, you know, say no, or, you know.
Could you give some more examples of that kind of thing that we should encourage to the older people here? Like what they're really good examples.
Yeah,
Could you make
okay.
a bit more of that concrete?
Giving permission to say no to a sexual act or something like that. Saying no to sending a sexual image over the phone, you know, the ramifications of that, why they should say no. You know, we don't want it to be a shaming of that, I guess, act, and like, you know, what you're doing is bad, no. But actually empowering them to make that choice by themselves, I think is really important, because growing up you have so many rules, and kids don't listen to rules half the time. No. So educating them and empowering them to actually make that decision on their own is really helpful. Other things could be, just encouraging the good behaviours. There's not very many good role models out there for young people. When you look at like the media and the famous people and what they're doing and what they're promoting is really not that great. So I think encouraging better role models for young people would be really good. Nick, do you have any other suggestions?
It does sound very cliched, but I think information and education definitely is the key. Sort of travelling through schools and chatting to this younger generation, it was sort of startling the things that they thought were okay and that were permissible. Yeah. Just you've got boys that are openly groping 14-year-old girls in the schoolyard, and you know, that's the thing that's done.
And the kids don't know what to do. We have girls come up to us and they're like, oh, this boy, like 10-year-old girls come up to us and they're like, this boy sent me this sexual porn video and I don't know what to do. You know, they just have no idea. They've not been told about any of this. And so just starting the conversation is the first step, I think.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that.
Yeah.
So I manage campaigns for Our Watch, and one of the campaigns we look after is now grown to a big initiative is The Line, so theline.org.au, facebook.com/lines, over 114,000 followers now. This is the space where we're trying to, I guess, help create that alternative narrative. And I think, you know, and being in the primary prevention space, what we realise is having these conversations and equipping young people to give them the information, the knowledge, and their parents as well is really important.
Yeah.
But it requires cultural change,
Yeah.
and that has to happen in every system, with legislation, with government, with communities, with schools.
Yeah.
So it's a really difficult one to tackle because with young people, I mean, they're so smart, and we know that from all the research that we did, those issues that you've just raised are completely right. They feel really quite alone. They feel like they're not getting the information that they actually need. They feel like they can't talk to their parents. When we research with parents, they think they know what's going on. Often they do not. They really want. Most want to have the conversation. They lack the language and the tools to be able to do it. So there's a massive opportunity there to give parents and teachers the language. Just to be able to have those conversations. But it's something that requires so much investment, and this is where obviously government has a major role in supporting, to actually prevent, obviously to address pornography, but that has that lead-on influence to violence against women and children, and more broadly a culture of disrespect.
Absolutely.
So I just have a question. A lot of late teens and early 20 girls claim that they're feminists to the point where they want to explore their sexuality. My question is, what is your response to those who claim that pornography allows them to feel empowered?
To women in
Hold on,
particular?
so repeat the question. So
Okay, so a lot of late teens and early 20 females claim to be third-wave feminists, where they want to explore sexuality and all that.
Sure.
And what would a response be, or what's your opinion be for those who claim that pornography allows them to feel empowered?
20-year-old female.
Well, I think the pornography that they're going to, we know is just so hardcore. You start off at whatever they call as vanilla porn, but you progress, and that progression is inevitable. And that's proven by all the research that's been spoken about today. And I think that, to actually be empowered is to feel like you have choice. And pornography it kind of gives one narrative. And it's, I just think it's not empowering.
I think the important thing in that circumstance is to remember that pornography, in this case, doesn't discriminate. Boys or girls, it's going to affect them in very, very similar ways. And whether that might start out as, a sense of empowerment, I would imagine that for quite a lot of young males it would start out as a sense of empowerment. And we've seen how that sort of ends. I would suggest to be very similar. Just got the young girl at the back's been waiting quite a while. Sorry.
I was just going to add to that, working with young people in schools, I don't think any form of empowerment's okay if it just empowers other people.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that means that young person might not be aware of that, but it doesn't make it less true.
Absolutely.
Just wanted to add that.
Beautiful.
I just want to also add a comment to a question. As somebody that's sort of training in counselling, a lot of women do express power if they have been, if power has been taken from them earlier in life, whether it's repressive parenting or sexual abuse or something like that. So it plays out later in life in the sense that they feel like they have power when they are taking control of their sexuality, as opposed to somebody taking, abusing theirs. And it could be, it's a fictitious power, so to speak. I believe the statement is correct, but it's a fictitious sense of power. It's not exactly what we call liberating the free power.
Up the back.
Yeah, just as far as educating kids in schools, is it predominantly independent or state schools that you go to? And how, I suppose, how hard it is to get to the schools? I know how hard it is, but how hard is it to get into the schools in the first case? Are schools willing to allow educators to come in and actually speak to their children? So just want to know, because you don't know how you go around.
Well, I think schools are quite desperate for it as well. They are...
State or independent?
Both.
Both, okay.
Absolutely both. Faith-based, not faith-based, all type of schools. I think this is an issue that's affecting every child in the school. And they're not equipped. They don't have the resources. So they're constantly looking for resources to bring in. And I think that absolutely, these kids, as soon as we talk to them, their eyes just light up because they've got this sense of relief in their eyes. They're like, oh, it's not me that is feeling like the only one that doesn't want to do this. It's a culture that says, I have to do this, but I don't actually want to do it. And so I think that, the teachers see it. The teachers are at the front line of this. The school counsellors are at the front line of this. They have girls, boys in their offices all the time, you know, ridden with anxiety, ridden with this, and they don't know what to do. And so I think bringing in professionals who are able to speak about these topics and really educate the kids is helpful for them. So, and I think as the issue gets more and more mainstream, we'll be seeing that a lot more as well.
Yeah, just to add to that, this is an issue that, as we sort of know, is still relatively taboo in society. Obviously, conversations like this are incredible and they give me a great sense of hope. But day to day, it's sort of still a bit of an icky thing, particularly at school. All the boys, you think your mates are doing it, but it's not something you're going to have a chat about. And I mean, while there might be some that are out there, from my experience, the majority, it's a secretive thing that this is taking place. And so when you have people come into these schools and say, hey, it's okay, we're going to talk about this, you're not the only one affected about it, chances are most people in the room have dealt with it in one circumstance or another. It's really quite, as Laura said, a weight lifted off their shoulders. And as this lady pointed out before, she's very correct in saying that even with a solid foundation at home with the parents, I've got a beautiful family, I love them very much. Still not something I'd probably be confident in talking to my mum about, if I'm going to be honest with you. Even to this day, I talk about what I'm doing here, and it's still sort of like, we use certain words and we don't use other words. So it's one of those touchy subjects. And so when you've got these people that can come into school, are equipped with that, it's a friendly face, somebody that they might have to see once and they don't have to interact with again, but they can automatically sort of connect with, then it's very much an environment where they freely speak.
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
Linda. Where was the question? Sorry. The process by getting into the schools?
No, yeah, I already do that. I already go into schools.
Yeah,
But what I'm finding is there's still, even amongst independent schools too, there's this fear.
Yes.
They're becoming really sensitive, especially some of the questions the kids might ask you on gender and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just finding I've done a lot of schools, but I'm still finding this resistance there. That,
Sure. So what we tend to do, what I tend to do is if it's a school that hasn't had it before, I tend to, how shall I word this? I might call it something else. So sexualisation of girls in media and popular culture, and they have a porn segment in the middle.
Yeah.
Porn,
or body image as well,
like sexting, all of that, because it can be too confronting. If you appear that you're going to go in all guns blazing and talk about porn, they freak out, the parents freak out. Sometimes they'll withdraw their kids, and even though it would be so helpful for them to be in a session. So sometimes I look for a bit of a soft landing, a soft entry point, so to speak.
Sneaky.
And then we do the porn component as a subsection of an overall talk about sexualisation. Then I find after that they see how well it went, how successful it was, how happy the kids were, and stuff. And then they'll get me to come in and do a follow-up, which will be the harder kind of stuff. So I've just given away my entire business. That's how we tend to do it.
And do you do it all over Australia? Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
One in front.
I just want to ask, if a young person came to you and said, I'm addict to porn, I know it's bad, I know it's destroying me, I don't like it, and I want to stop, what would you say to them?
Seek help, seek help professionally. One, so because it's an addiction. Talking about it, finding support groups. There's counsellors, online support groups, a lot of organisations that can help with it.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a very good, not that we're plugging from here, but there's a very good organisation called Fight the New Drug, and they have a range of books which I've got on me off the back, and other sort of products that are tailored exactly towards that. Because as you say, it's one of those things where a lot of kids, again, we hear that, as you say, they're struggling with it, they don't want to be struggling with it. It's something that they know that is in the long run going to be damaging for them, that it might not align with their faith background, all these different things, and yet for some reason it's continued use. And that can also involve a lot of sort of guilt and shame, if that's a continued cycle that they can't escape. I would definitely agree with what Laura said in finding, I think accountability partners are big with that, whether that is, a parent, a friend, a cousin, whatever that may be, particularly, if you find that in a certain group there's multiple children struggling with that, if you can have a leader meeting with them, again, whether that's yourself or whether that's a professional, whether it's youth worker or whatever it may be, but definitely have a bit of a look. There are multiple sort of platforms out there that tailor specifically towards that.
I definitely think that there's room, so much room, for more programs for younger people as well, because you have a lot of programs for drug rehabilitation, alcohol rehabilitation, but there's not a lot out there for pornography at all. And so I think I think there's a huge gap for that. And so I think over the next few years, as the conversation gets more and more, we'll be seeing a lot more spring up. But I think there's definitely more room for
Yeah, jump in.
So like, I was going to say something similar to that, and I just wanted to like respond as a young person, because you asked, what if someone comes to you and someone else asks like, what can we as educators or people in society, I know some of you like work for different people, you've got like the person from The Line, which I've seen on Facebook and interacted with, thank you for doing that. Young people love to get on board if they feel like there's a movement, if they feel like there's a group, if they feel like there is something that they can contribute to. So I've seen how social media and the internet can be like one of the darkest things in society, and it can cause problems, but it can also bring some of the most hope to those situations. And like we talked about how isolation can cause an escalation in porn use and stuff because people are afraid. So things like destigmatizing the topic and being able to talk about it is actually one of the biggest steps forward that you can be taking. So right here, right now, this is something that is really good for young people, and I would love it if there's more young people here today. So if we can create both online and in the real world a movement that young people would feel encouraged and empowered by, that would cause them to want to join in. And not so much, like it's important to talk about anti-pornification of society, anti-sexualization, anti-people trafficking and all of that, but you need to offer a pro, because you need to have something that they're fighting towards. So what are we fighting towards? And for me, it's freedom and it's love and it's getting rid of those things that have held us back in society. And I think that that's what we're all fighting for, and you need to represent it to the children and the young people as something that they can jump on board with. And Fight the New Drug has done that because they've made it cool and they've made it acceptable and they've made it as like, let's all fight this thing together, because if you know young people, they like to rebel and they like to fight. So find out what they're fighting and get
So
them
their
together.
tagline is porn kills love, but I actually think that love kills porn. And I think that if we're able to offer them, you know, this because they've heard enough about what everyone's against in this world. But if we're able to offer them something that they're for, I think we'll see a lot more people get on board it.
Excuse me, I just wanted to interject there too. The Fight the New Drug has an online program called Fortify, which is another branch, which is an online 12-step, and it's specifically, they've made it that older people have to pay for it, but anybody under the age of, I think it's 20 or 25 can access it for free. So the parents pay for it by accessing it through theirs, but that's also another great free online thing that you can say, here, start here, and it works them through the 12-step program in this beautiful kind of group format that allows them to
app
see.
so you can use it on your phone.
Exactly. It's a really fantastic program.
It is. I recommend.
I'm sorry.
Can I just share something? Last year I went over to Florida for the National Center on Sexual Exploitation conference that they held over there. And something that hasn't really been talked about today is about little girls who find pornography and then they have an addiction to it. And I met a girl over there by the name of Crystal Renaud, who has written a book to help girls who have struggled with addiction to pornography. And she runs a ministry called Dirty Girls Ministries. So for also for just people that are struggling with that, I just thought that's just another great resource for someone who, you know, hasn't been really spoken about much today, with women or girls or teenage girls that have got addictions to pornography as well. So I just wanted to
Absolutely. No, thank you. That's perfect.
I wanted to. I do want to ask a question. I don't want this to be a shit sharing, but I do want to get a question. I talked a friend into giving up pornography because for me, I didn't even really view porn until I was in my early 20s. As crazy as that sounds, even though I'm 31, I completely avoided it and didn't continue anything further than that. But my great interest in combating porn was the fact that we have a $32 billion sex slave industry due to the fact that we have a $100 billion porn industry. And
100 billion.
That's what he said.
That's what he said.
No, I thought you said million.
Oh, sorry, billion.
No, I'd hate to underestimate.
Sorry. And it seems to me that people are starting to slowly realise this, although I speak to a few senators who didn't even know this was a fact, which is concerning to me. But I spoke to him because he was having a lot of depressive issues. He's suffering a lot of depression. I said, maybe you should consider giving up porn. managed pharmacies for the last 10 years, especially one that's looking after all the psych patients at the Alfred Hospital, we notice there's a lot of impotency among 30-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 26-year-olds related to this issue. I think a lot of guys don't see porn necessarily as a real issue. They don't personalise it unless it's their daughter.
Yeah.
They won't actually personalise it as an issue. It's just a personal vice maybe.
Yeah.
But when they see it as a consequence, they'll actually change. The irony is he spoke to another friend of his who is suffering impotency and was saying, well, obviously this is because you consume porn all the time, but he couldn't make the connection at all. He said it must be biological, it must be something. It mustn't be the fact that I'm watching porn literally, 3 times a day.
Yeah.
So I think maybe for a lot of guys, and this is what I want to know, what you talk about in relation to education for guys. What are you telling guys? Because I think guys have a real disconnect between, they seem to dissociate pornography a lot easier from actual people and how it damages themselves.
Definitely, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I love hearing you speak about that. I found it really interesting downstairs in Joe's talk just before, how he was talking about how, with men, and particularly adolescent males, that arousal state then deactivates that threat center. And how, exactly as you say, we can't tend to associate the threats, whether that's to ourselves or to those around us. Something that I do talk to the young boys that I get the chance to speak with about is exactly that, how it's affecting them. They hear a lot about how it's affecting sex slave trading, their girlfriends, their wives, their mothers, their daughters, whatever it may be, and general sort of male-female power roles and equality and that sort of thing. But particularly how it affects them, they don't really get a lot of information on. Excuse me. As you say, we're now seeing increased rates of PE, of DE, of impotence in 20-year-old males, 20 to 30, where previously that's not happened until 30, 40, that sort of age. And yet, this is a growing epidemic that we're facing, and a lot of guys aren't realising it until it's too late. As well as that, as you say, we're spending hours upon hours a week in our locked up in a room, viewing pornography. What's that doing for your social skills? You're missing out on that valuable time where you're actually connecting with those around you, learning how to talk to a girl, learning how to talk to a boy, whatever the case may be. And so that's resulting in heightened levels of aggression. And as I said previously, if this is something that they've been fighting with for quite a while, it can lead to high levels of shame, of guilt, of a sense of helplessness in that. So it's definitely something that we're talking them through as well.
Are we meant to be somewhere else now? Anyone got it? I just don't want to keep you from the next session, but we'll just double check. What time
I think we
is
are.
it? Oh, is it 4 o'clock? Oh, you've all chosen us over food. It's great.
Can I get food?
Can you go? Okay, great, cool. Next question, yes.
Sorry, when we talk about prevention for giving up porn, I think one of the key things coming up would be like education, finding more information, or referring to an appropriate program or appropriate sort of professionals. There's a lot of new resources that I have personally sort of spent a lot of time on, just kind of skeptical. But I was wondering if you could direct me, or even anyone from the audience, to sort of resources to help us with some clients who have or suffer through sort of mental disability or learning disability, and how so that they're at an age where through YouTube they see like, oh, that's how you treat women, but in terms of learning and taking in the information, it's sort of a challenge for them to kind of take that in. So I was just wondering if, what sort of resources are available for my center to kind of educate the staff and myself to kind of address some dialogue.
My heart breaks because I can't think of any off the top of my head, but if anybody would like...
Sex would be beyond blue. But it's bigger than that,
It's such a huge...
And I think this is where maybe there is a gap, and maybe Kids Helpline is great, like to talk to young people, but there is a gap.
There's a huge
just
gap.
because
There's
holistic.
Because it's not just the what information you transfer, how you educate, it's how you educate.
Exactly, and you've got to get to them at your level, at their level. Which is like what we were saying before with the movement, like people want to be a part of something, especially like socially on like social media, and they want to see things like that. So like almost lecturing to them doesn't work sometimes, and getting them involved and getting them, it's a part of like YouTube and utilizing what we have. So social media and Instagram and images and videos, and everyone loves little viral videos and things like that.
You're so captivated by like what's out there, like just commercial media, like YouTube and objectification education, what you see, and just media in general. It's just that I find it personally hard to kind of counter that when
well, that's the thing. There's not
they're captivated by
there's not a
something
lot
that
out
they
there.
just sort of won't be able to.
Struggle to
take
grasp.
in.
I think you have found, at least in this room, a bit of a hole in the market, so I'd encourage you, man. Develop something for that. Absolutely.
You guys starting to talk about movements?
Get on board.
Okay, we'll start a movement here right
Yeah,
now.
we need it. Yeah.
Young people.
I was just sort of similar to what you were saying. For people who are struggling with porn addiction, just like with any addiction, it's really useful, sort of vital to have some sort of support network.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a Fight the New Drug. Does that have some sort of like online
there's a
forum
community
where people can come together?
So as this lady pointed out, there's the Fortify program. So they've published a book, Fortify. I would highly recommend if it's something that you or someone you know is struggling with.
So does that allow them to sort of like people who are struggling with the same things to come together and discuss? Because
as far as I'm aware, I don't think there's like a group chat sort of environment, but I believe that there's a bit of one-on-one sort of counselling, even if that is just via sort of user interface, and then there's the option to then talk to a person as well.
And Reddit as well, the no fap.
I don't think it's a group chat format design, but I think the powerful thing about it is the fact that you can get it free of charge, and it'll spark your understanding of 12-step groups, because anybody who identifies it as an addiction will need to move to the 12-step, and hopefully even better a personal counselling situation as well. But I offered it there as a starter, but I don't know that it could be an all-encompassing. I don't think we should call it an all-encompassing, but it's certainly a start that will give you, an avenue for looking for other things.
And it is very, very
free
practical.
to start.
Yep. I should say, people under, from memory, I think it's 21.
It's under 27.
Yeah.
It's youth.
Okay. Yeah. So it's free for youth, and very, very
but
practical.
Even adults, it's only $30 or $40 or something like that. It's not an expensive.
Correct.
So I was just more sort of curious as for the support. So I don't know.
It's not a lot. No, I know. There's
it never is.
I'm wondering, like, is Marianne from East Safety?
So they're doing consultations at the moment. I'll go on Thursday where we're going to be discussing ideas for, I guess, like how to support young people, parents, etc. on the issue of, online safety, pornography, etc. So I've taken down a lot of these notes, and I think, and there could be an opportunity if nobody else has done it, that we'll talk about those ideas, and hopefully, obviously see what change can happen, what services might be able to be implemented.
Yeah, and I think there's so many people, and I think as this issue grows more, a lot of things will spring up. And I think, like, I've got loads of ideas that I want to do, Nick's got loads of ideas he wants to do, there's things that'll spring up. And as we identify those niches in the market and where the gaps are and things like that, I'm hoping that, they'll be filled, because people are so desperate for it.
Absolutely.
Quick question
before
we go. It's interesting. It has come to my attention that most of the people who support this anti-movement, anti-porn movement, happen to be Christians or Catholics. I don't know if that's like the 90% of the people I spoke to is just all Christians. I don't know. Can I just quickly show of hands if you are not a Christian or Catholic in here?
No, I actually think it's.
I think it's irrelevant.
The fact is, this is a very diverse. Very diverse.
If 90% of the people who are aware of this, I just think everyone should be aware of it. That's all. I'm trying to get everyone. I think if 90% of people are aware of it.
This event today has been very evidence-based, research, academic, and it's university.
I'm not like it's not.
No, you've been quite intrusive with people today and asking people personal questions, and it's really not your place to do that.
We'll go to the next question. You had a quick question.
Sorry, I was just curious, after you go into schools and you bring the information to the children, saying this isn't healthy, etc., since so many have already been exposed to this and think it's normal behaviour, I'm just wondering, what happens when these children actually realise that they've been taking advantage of other children, and the trauma that's going to be done to the children that realise they've been abused? I'm just wondering, how are schools, how are people going to deal with the weight of trauma of the whole generation?
Yeah. And it's up to the school counsellors, and that's ridiculous, because that's an impossible task. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's devastating.
Yeah.
It's
huge.
We know that 4 and 5-year-olds are in specialist treatment programs to deal with sexually inappropriate
that's what I'm kind of scared about. How do you, that's normal, they think it's normal, when you realise it's not. We have white ribbon to fight against domestic violence and equality of both genders, and yet we're secretly encouraging the opposite.
Yeah.
What are we doing to the children?
Yeah.
One of the reasons we're having this event today is to face the reality.
Again, I think we're all in agreement on
I
that.
talk about this with my friends, they tell me to stop being negative. I don't have kids, they do.
I'll find out soon enough.
It is. It's
Yeah,
devastating
don't
because
stop
those,
talking.
not at all.
It's amazing. And you need people with loud voices like that, because otherwise it's just going to keep going and slipping under the rug, and
That's
it's
it.
just going to get worse.
Because those 4 and 5 year olds that are exposed to that and sort of showing those early signs turn into the 17-year-olds at parties that think it's okay that a girl's passed out drunk to have their way.
So where's the boundary level?
This is what we're trying to work towards.
Hi, sorry.
So I'm still in high school, and I've noticed, like, I just moved recently to Anglican school, and the kids who declare themselves as Christians and stick to abstinence and whatnot, who don't watch pornography, they're usually almost persecuted for not doing that. Like, why do you think that? How do you combat the other people who are having this idea that it's normal to be watching this and it's perfectly healthy to be taking the actions that they're suggesting?
Great question. Great question. Yeah.
I think the education information stuff that these guys were talking about earlier. You don't know it's bad. I mean, smoking was fine 10 years ago, but guess what? Now it gives you cancer.
Exactly. The doctors were smoking.
Yeah,
you know, like
it's interesting you say that because that's the largest sort of analogy that they've been drawing in this last sort of half decade of research. Is that they're saying pornography to sort of the 2000s is what smoking was to the 50s. Everyone does it. It's fine. You know, doctors smoke Camels, that sort of stuff. And now, same with pornography, it's like, oh yeah, it's just healthy. Adolescent males do it. It's just part of life, part of growing up. And now we're sort of finding out those long-term health effects.
I think even further in education, you mentioned earlier, Laura, that love kills porn.
Yeah.
Love kills porn. I work in schools, around the country, about 100 high schools around the country, and a few of the speakers today have talked about inspiring as well, and I think it's not just good enough to educate.
Yeah.
You have to put
You
forward
have
more
to empower them.
of love and perhaps from whatever context you're from, healthy marriage, healthy families. Love is the answer as well. So, education is important, but you also need to direct people towards a fulfilling, full life.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to those of you that are, or us that are on the front lines, whether they're teachers, youth workers, educators. I remember having a conversation with a teacher in a high school that I visited after I'd just spoken to his form class, which was all boys, I think aged 14, 15. And he inspired me because he was there saying how he so desperately wanted all these boys of his to know what it was like to have this beautiful, intimate, loving sexual relationship that he told me he'd enjoyed with his wife over the last decade, 11 years, whatever it was. And seeing a guy like that in that position where he can directly influence and inspire them, having just that drive for that better life and that better option, that love for them, is what we need more of.
Yeah. As opposed to the relationships we see the kids having these days.
Exactly, which is all about numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was with, I'm a youth case manager, so I work with 12 to 25-year-olds. And the way they pass each other around, it breaks my heart. They have no concept of what love is. It's all very, we're not dating, we're just fucking. We're, we were together last week, but I'm with this one next week, and then, I'm with his best friend now, or whatever. It blows my mind. It's just become so casual and so throwaway.
So that's why going into schools, talking to the whole school, talking to all the kids, everyone's on the same page, and at least, they'll be able to start the conversation with the person next to them and be like, yeah, I feel this, let's feel this.
Yeah.
Let's together say that we don't want to do this. So I think grouping together as well is really helpful.
I think that's the thing to remember as well, is that, as said before, this has been an issue that has taken generations to sort of build the foundations for, and we've worked up to this point now where we realise it's an issue. So why do we think that it's going to be an overnight solution, sadly? It's going to take possibly generations to fix this as well. Yeah.
How do you deal with communities or schools where pornography is a big taboo subject? Like, I know we had a good strategy before, but what are some other strategies on getting into both schools and communities? Because it's a big problem, but they don't want to deal with it. So I want to tap into those places and start something.
Was the question, how do you gain entry into schools?
Yeah, especially the ones that really don't want to talk about
Yeah.
it.
I think the lady who talks was sitting right behind you.
But they're additional strategies. That's a good one.
I think we might have an answer in the corner over here.
I work in a high school, and I am constantly advocating to my supervisors about people that we could potentially get in to chat. I think the answer to that is multifaceted, in all honesty. I guess at the core of the issue is that you could imagine how many diverse opinions are in this room alone. High school principals are dealing with that on, 1,000, 1,500 students and their parents, and you add that all in a room, and here's one person trying to make sure that they're not offending the majority or the minority, or it can get very complicated in that sense. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about it. I'm not saying that. I think it's even more of a reason to talk about it. I just mean that when ideas are being presented to people in that position, it's about them knowing that A, you have the maturity to handle that as a presenter or as a staff member if you're wanting to get someone in, and B, the people who are coming in respect that about the room, that they're prepared to handle that. Like was said before, if doing a big elaborate talk on pornography isn't appropriate, then maybe catering those things, but making sure that people that you're going to and asking for that talk to be had in their school are aware that you have that maturity about you, I think is really important.
I'd just like to add to that, sorry, because sometimes, a lot of the kids I see are already out of school, so school programs don't help. So you can also approach the youth centres to do out-of-school programs, and that's, I think, a very underutilised option, because, if schools aren't going to take it, maybe we can do it outside of school. And then maybe those kids go to school and say, I just said this is amazing, and we can convert the school that way. There's other options.
But the fact we are talking about it in schools in the first place is a sign of hope. And I think that is, what we should leave on. Because the more and more schools we talk to, the more and more kids get talked to, and that's, that's the start of it. And I think if we can continue doing that and continuing doing that on a greater scale, we'll be able to see a little bit of change. So, hope it was helpful today. Thanks for coming. Thanks for all the amazing questions.